The hedge between their driveways had always been just a hedge, dense privet, neatly trimmed, the kind of green barrier you notice when reversing your car but never really see. That Tuesday afternoon, as autumn lights slanted golden through the maples, something unexpected happened. Something that made Marcus pause mid-stride with his rake still in hand. He was clearing leaves after an early October windstorm when he heard his neighbor, Diane, speak his name. He glanced up and found her standing at the gap in the hedge, shoulders hunched, mascara smudged beneath her eyes like she'd been crying and trying to hide it. "I haven't had a man in 3 years," she said, voice breaking on the last word. "Could you possibly help me with that?" Marcus froze. The rake clattered against the driveway. His brain stuttered through a dozen impossible responses, heat creeping up his neck. But before panic could fully set in, she rushed on, words tumbling over each other. "I mean, God, I'm sorry. I mean, help with things around the house. Repairs. My husband left 3 years ago, and I've been trying to manage everything myself, but I'm drowning here." The look in her eyes finally registered. Exhausted, mortified, desperate in the most ordinary way, not romantic longing, but the soul-deep weariness of someone who'd been holding up a crumbling ceiling alone for far too long. Marcus set the rake down carefully and walked to the hedge. "Diane, you don't need to apologize. What's broken?" The relief that washed over her face was instant. Her rigid posture softened. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. "The bathroom faucet won't stop running. The back gate drags on the ground. And something's wrong with the furnace. It makes this horrible grinding sound every time it starts." Marcus nodded. "I'll grab my toolbox." That's how it began. When he stepped through her back gate, he noticed the small surrenders to chaos. Warped deck boards, gutters overflowing with leaves, a broken planter lying on its side. Nothing catastrophic, but the accumulated weight of 100 small failures pressing down on someone already carrying too much. Inside, the bathroom faucet was worse than she'd described. The constant drip had stained the porcelain and pooled water beneath the vanity, warping the laminate floor. Diane hovered in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself as though bracing for judgment. But Marcus didn't judge. He knelt, opened the cabinet, and began assessing the connections. Corroded washers, loose fittings, simple fixes that had become mountains when you were already overwhelmed. "I tried watching YouTube videos," Diane said quietly. "I bought a wrench set, but every time I started I'd just freeze. I felt so incompetent." "You're not incompetent," Marcus said, working the wrench. "You're one person doing the work of two. That's not failure, that's just math." Silence settled between them. Not awkward, but gentle. The kind of quiet that fills a space after years of arguments. When he stood and turned the water on, not a single drop fell from the spout. Diane's face transformed. "I can't tell you what this means to me." But he understood. He could see it written in every corner of this house. Years of solo decisions, of pretending strength, of pride that had slowly calcified into isolation until asking for help felt like admitting defeat. Over the following week, Marcus became a familiar presence in her driveway. He planed down the dragging gate, replaced the furnace's worn belt, and secured loose siding that had been rattling in the wind. He showed her how to reset the circuit breaker without fear. He taught her to use the drill confidently, hands steady, eyes focused. He never made her feel small. Instead, he made her feel capable. Not because she could now do everything herself, but because she understood she didn't have to. One afternoon, while replacing rotted boards on her deck, Marcus noticed a photograph tucked inside the shed. A younger Diane with a broad-shouldered man, both laughing, covered in paint. "Your husband?" he asked carefully. She shook her head. "My father. That was the day we painted the garage together." She paused, running her thumb along a nail. "When he died, I inherited this house. I thought I could maintain it the way he did. But every time something broke, I felt like I was letting him down." Marcus set his hammer aside. "He wouldn't want you struggling alone, Diane." Her eyes glistened, but she blinked hard and looked away. What grew between them over those autumn weeks wasn't romance. It was something quieter and more enduring. mutual respect. A connection forged not from attraction but from the simple act of showing up when someone needed it most. Sometimes kindness isn't grand gestures or dramatic rescues. Sometimes it's just being the person who says, "You don't have to do this alone." One morning, Diane appeared at his door holding a ceramic dish covered in foil. Steam rose from the edges. "You've done so much," she said. "I made lasagna. Please, let me do something in return." Marcus smiled. "You don't owe me anything." "It's not about owing." Her voice was firm. "It's about gratitude." They sat on his front steps sharing the meal, watching neighborhood kids bike past, existing in that rare space where two people can be silent together without discomfort. Simple peace. The moment that mattered most came the following week. Marcus was installing a new mailbox post when the sledgehammer glanced off and caught his thumb. He swore, cradling his hand. Diane materialized instantly, as if she'd been watching. "Are you okay? Let me see." "Just a bruise," he said, laughing through the pain. She wouldn't hear it. She guided him inside, sat him down, produced ice and bandages with the efficiency of someone who'd raised children. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped his thumb. "You've helped me so much," she whispered. "I couldn't stand it if you got hurt because of me." Her worry touched something deep in his chest. That's when he understood. Kindness had changed them both. He'd offered support, yes, but she'd given him purpose. She'd reminded him that small acts mattered, that choosing compassion over indifference was never wasted effort. As October deepened into November, Diane grew visibly stronger. She fixed a drawer track herself. She replaced the weather stripping around the front door without calling for backup. She even climbed a ladder to clean the gutters, then texted him a triumphant photo from the roof. But what moved Marcus most was when she knocked on his door one Saturday morning, toolbox in hand and determination in her eyes. "You've been helping me," she said. "Now I want to help someone else. Mr. Chun down the block, his wheelchair ramp is coming loose. I thought maybe we could fix it together." And they did. That afternoon, they worked side by side, drilling new supports, leveling the boards, while Mr. Chun watched from his window with a grateful smile. Kindness rippled outward just like that, from one struggling household to the next, from one weary soul to one grateful neighbor. Nothing flashy, nothing extraordinary, just ordinary people choosing compassion over apathy. By December, the hedge between their houses looked different to Marcus. Not just a property line anymore, but a place where walls had come down, where two people had met in their brokenness and built something sturdy from it. It wasn't about faucets or furnaces or gates. It was about connection, about remembering that humans weren't designed to weather life's storms alone, that asking for help isn't surrender, and offering help isn't charity. It's just being human. One evening, as the first snow began to fall, Marcus stood at his window and watched Diane in her driveway, showing her teenage son how to change a tire. The boy struggled with the lug wrench, and she guided his hands patiently, the same way Marcus had guided hers weeks ago. He realized something then. Kindness doesn't just repair broken things. It repairs broken people. It transforms strangers into neighbors, neighbors into friends, isolation into belonging, and despair into hope. The next morning, Marcus noticed old Mrs. Kowalski across the street struggling with her snow shovel. He grabbed his own and crossed over without thinking. "Need a hand?" he asked. Her face lit up with relief. "I hate to be a bother." "You're not," Marcus said, already clearing her walk. "Trust me, you're not." And as he worked, he glanced back at his house and saw Diane watching from her window. She raised her coffee mug in salute, smiling. The cycle continued, because that's what kindness does. It doesn't just touch two lives and stop. It spreads like light through a dark room, finding every corner, illuminating every shadow. One small act creates another, which creates another, until an entire neighborhood remembers what it means to care. That winter, their street transformed. People who'd lived next to each other for years without speaking began to wave, to chat, to offer help before it was needed. All because two people at a hedge had chosen vulnerability over pride and compassion over distance. On Christmas Eve, Marcus found a card in his mailbox. Inside, Diane had written simply, "Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. You changed everything." He folded the card carefully and tucked it in his wallet, where it would stay. Because she was wrong about one thing, she had changed everything too. She'd reminded him that being needed wasn't a burden but a gift, that the smallest acts of kindness, fixing a leak, listening without judgment, showing up when someone asks, these weren't trivial. They were everything. As snow fell softly outside, Marcus sat by his window and thought about all the ways people carry invisible weight. All the neighbors who might be drowning quietly, too embarrassed to ask for help, too proud to admit they're struggling. He thought about how easy it would be to look the other way, to stay in your own yard, mind your own business, let people handle their own problems. And he thought about how much better it felt to be the person who says, I can help. So when spring came and he noticed the new family down the street struggling with their overgrown yard, he didn't hesitate. He walked down with his trimmer and introduced himself. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said. "You need a hand getting this under control?" The young father's shoulders sagged with relief. "Man, I've been dreading tackling this." "You sure?" "Positive," Marcus said. "Besides, my neighbor taught me something important. We're not meant to do life alone." And as they worked together in the sunshine, Marcus understood that this was the real story. Not one act of kindness, but 1,000 small ones, rippling outward endlessly, fixing broken things, mending broken people, building a world where no one has to say, I haven't had help in years, because help is simply there, offered freely, received gratefully, and passed along generously. The hedge was just a hedge. But the space between people, that could be anything you chose to make it. Marcus chose kindness, and it changed everything.